This is where we left off in the last video. You can see that we have now our buttons and they all work. Well, they don't work because there's nothing attached to them, but they would work if we clicked on them and we had them attached to files. We're going to create the files after we get done with all the other styling. So the next thing we're going to work on is these two things. We have this important stuff, and then we also have hours operation address and yada yada yada, all this stuff down here. So let's go ahead and style that, because this is going to be on one side and this is going to be on the other side. So let's go back and take a look at how we're going to do that. Okay, so the article, we're going to do that first. And we actually, if we wanted to, let's go ahead and do this. Section article, so it's the article inside a section. We only have one article, so we could have just used article, but let's be more specific. And for that, what we want to do is we want to float that. And we're going to float it to the left, because we want it to be on the left-hand side. But we also have to specify the width of it. Now, I could figure out how many pixels there are, but what I'm going to do is let the browser take care of that. I know that I want the article to take up a little bit more room than the aside. So for the width, I'm going to use flexible by using our percentage, sort of like what we did with the main at 97%. We're going to make this 65%. So whatever size it is, this article is going to take up 65% of that space. And then we have the asides. There'll be a section, aside, and we want this to take up the other space. So we're going to make this width. Now, if we made it 35, it would take up the whole thing, but we'd see that it would end up wrapping, because padding and borders we might put on there is not going to fit. So we're going to give it a little more space, and we're going to make it 25%. So you can see that there's going to be 10% missing somewhere, and that's going to be the space between them, because we're going to take this one and float it to the right. Oops. Float and make this to the right. So this is going to go left and take up 65%. Then there'll be 10% of nothing, and then there'll be 25% for the aside. So let's see how that looks. We'll do File, Save All, and then refresh. So you can see that, well, this one moved over here, this one moved over there, and that's fine. But look what happened down here. There is nothing here, and this is the footer. The footer is moved up. All right, and that's what happens when you use floats, why we don't like using floats. Floats removed this and this from the DOM, so now there's nothing in section. So footer moved up, and we also had a collapsing border here. So how we're going to fix that is something called clear fix, and that is we're going to come back here, and actually I'm going to put this up here rather than below, because I try to do top to bottom. We want to change the section. Right now the section, as far as the browser is concerned, has nothing in it. So I can tell it, listen, ignore the space, just make everything fit inside it by using the overflow. And we're going to make it automatic. We're going to say, well, just don't let stuff overflow outside it. Just make it as big as it needs to be for the content that's going to be on the page, which is going to be this article on the side. So let's do File, Save All, and then refresh. So see, this is still here, and this doesn't go down there. Let's refresh it. And now it looks like we want it. Now you can see that on the right-hand side we have the aside, left-hand side we have the article stuff, and then our footer moved back down to the bottom where it needed to be. We can't see that because, and there it is, down there. Didn't want to do that. Windows, what a pain in the neck. Do what I want, not what you think I might need. There it goes again. Alright. There we go. Alright, now we can see the footer down here. Alright. Now, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and add a little bit of padding, and let's go ahead and add some 10 pixels of padding to it. We want both of them to have that padding because we don't want them touching the sides. So we're going to put padding on all sides of that. And since both of them are going to have the same padding, we can use a compound selector, and that is article, comma, aside, and that says I want these two elements. So if I don't have a comma, it says aside inside article. When there's a comma there, it says I just want you to do these. And actually, I could have said section article, comma, section aside. That's an awful lot of extra typing. We only have one article on one side, and it'll make this kind of look messy. So we'll just say article and aside. But if there was an article and aside, say in a different part of the website, say the footer had an article and aside, for whatever reason, then I would want to be specific and say section article, section aside, so that only those are being impacted. All right. So let's go ahead and add our padding, and I'm going to add 10 pixels, and we'll do File, Save All, and then refresh, and there we go. Okay, let's see how this all works together. So you can see when I move it in and out, it just resizes itself very nicely. Now we may have problems with this padding being here, and that is when it gets to a certain size, since these are percentages, and this is a 10 pixel, that's all it's going to be is 10 pixels always, we could end up having it where it breaks these when it gets to a smaller size. So we're going to fix that by changing the box sizing. So box sizing does not include the so the article inside does not include the padding. That's extra, so it's not added to it. So what we're going to say is I want to change the box sizing and make it border box, and border box is going to add the padding into it so we don't worry about it breaking when it gets to a certain size, and that 10 pixels ends up making it so that maybe 10 pixels is more than 10% of the size of the window. And if that's true, then it's going to make the aside wrap. So let's go ahead and save it, and we won't notice much difference. You can see that it made it a little bit smaller because the 10 pixels is part of that, but you can see it breaks when I get all the way down here. We're going to have to fix that anyway, but we didn't want to have a mess with the other. Alright, so there is that. Now the last thing we're going to do is our footer. So I'll move on down to the bottom. On that one, I want to do two things. I want to add a line between, so you can see there's nothing between the footer and that. It's all that blue color. So I'm going to change the color and add a little bit of border. So I'm going to do background color. I think I'd use enough background color that's the first thing it would do. Background color, I'm going to make it white. And let's do File, Save All. Then refresh, and you can see there's that white, but I'd like to have a little bit of something else between these two colors than just the color difference. So we'll just add a border to it. So border, I don't want it around the whole thing, I just want it around the top. So we'll specify the border top, and let's make it a 2 pixel solid blue. So that's width. With border width, border style, border color. Let's do File, Save All, and then refresh. Nice. So that, I think that looks a little bit better. It almost looks like it's bleeding through from behind there, but it definitely shows that there's a difference between these two sections on the page. All right, and done with this video.